Like I said in the video that I did on Legacies, it does really have a bit of a villain problem. Although it has a lot of problems, I think the villains ruin the story a lot more than any other problem that Legacies had. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a few characters that I can say that are genuinely alright characters or decent characters, but for the most part, a lot of the villains are just either terrible or really forgettable. Now, just like with the Vampire Diaries and the originals, I'm going to be compiling all of the villains in Legacies and then ranking them from worst to best. However, because Legacies is a monster of the week type of show, there really isn't much of a point to actually go through every single villain because a lot of them really were only there for a really short time, meaning that there won't really be much to actually say about them. So in terms of Malivore's monsters, I basically just merged them all with Malivore. But anyway, join me as I rank every single villain in Legacies from worst to best. At number 13, Malivore and his monsters, like all of them. And like I said earlier on, there are a lot of them and there really isn't much of a point of me actually going through every single one of them because they weren't really on screen for too long and there won't really be much to say about them because I will just keep repeating myself over and over again. It will get really repetitive very quickly. But to summarize it, they weren't really good villains, not much story to them. They kind of just didn't register on any criteria, to the point in which at least any of them could be notable. However, Malivore, I think Malivore is one of the few characters that I could actually remember that is the sole reason that an entire show died. Like, I have never seen a character kill a show just as effective as Malivore actually did. Like, Malivore murdered not only Legacies, but the entirety of the Vampire Diaries universe. And it's made even worse based on the fact that he lasted for 4 seasons. I don't know how exactly the writers actually got confident enough to actually believe that he's captivating enough for him to last that long. He was a mudman for the majority of the time that we actually knew him for. And that basically make it impossible for us to actually resonate with him. That's the exact same issue I had with the Hollow. Blue Light, Mudman, they don't have a physical presence. I can't possibly resonate with people that I can't see or that can't even give emotions. And again, 4 seasons, no great scenes, no motivations. Like, what was his motivations? Like, what was the reasons why he actually was doing what he was doing? Like, the only motivation he had was the motivation to actually kill Hope, which is because he's doing it out of self-defense, because Hope could also kill him. But that's kind of it, really. He wants to make himself perfect. Why? Like, what exactly did he witness to actually come to that conclusion that he needs to make himself a lot better? Why did he believe he needs to make himself a human? Not to mention, he wasn't even threatening and he had zero positive impact on any of the main characters. Like, the only main character that he had a positive impact on was Hope at the very end. And all of that came from his death, as in the aftermath that came after his death, which created no humanity Hope. But before that, nothing. That's 3 seasons plus 4 episodes of season 4. Nothing. The storyline sucked, and the person that was made centerpiece for it was Landon, one of the most boring characters in the entire verse. And the storyline just limited Hope's existence to just Landon's girlfriend and the tribrid girl, or the person that could potentially be a tribrid. That's it. That was all of Hope. All of the complexities that she actually had in the originals, yeah, that doesn't exist here. And all of it was because of Malivore's storyline. Malivore as a character sucked. He garnered no emotion in terms of positive impact on the story and the characters. It was non-existent. Zero chemistry with anyone, and he had no great scenes. But my biggest problem with him is the fact that he lasted way too long for no reason. There is no reason for him to go past season 2. And number 12, Diego. Werewolf guy, didn't really do much. He just was sent to the prison world and he was only part of that storyline. But because Malivore sucked, he's going to be above him. And number 11, Wendy, witch girl. Same season, got sent to the prison world and was part of that storyline. Again, didn't really do much, but because Malivore sucked, she is also going to be above Malivore. And number 10, the Triad. And number 9, Jade. Now moving on from characters that sucked to characters that are either below average or just average. Now the reason why I have Jade ranked above her friends is because they actually took their time with Jade compared to her friends. Now Jade particularly doesn't really have any great scenes, but she does have a bit of emotional scenes. And because the actress is actually good, it sort of makes those scenes a little bit decent. A lot higher than everyone else that's ranked below her. And number 8, Alyssa Chang. And the only reason why Alyssa Chang is even ranked here is because, don't get me wrong, it's still very low, as in this is below average. But the only reason why she was ranked here is because she was probably one of the catalysts to majority of the main plot lines. As in most of the things that did happen, probably has Alyssa Chang written all over it. However, she could be higher if she wasn't incredibly annoying, like unbearably annoying. She's not awful, she's just very annoying. Every single time she says something, it pissed me off. Like, her character is just that annoying. But anyways, the balance of her annoying nature and the fact that she was involved with majority of the major plot lines, it automatically puts her at below average. And number 7, Ken. Now moving on to the average tier. Ken is a very good example of bigger doesn't always mean better when it comes to writing, especially when it comes to villains, which tends to be a massive issue when it comes to the Vampire Diaries universe because they keep actually trying to follow that model which constantly doesn't work. And all of this was done just because it was working at the start. For example, you had Katherine to Damon, Katherine being a lot stronger than Damon and a much better written character than Damon. So they just believed that just because that worked and you actually created a better written villain than Damon was, which is going to create an even bigger, more powerful character. And then they came up with the concept of Klaus. Klaus is a lot more powerful than Katherine and also a much better character than Katherine. Which again, worked. And then it just went downhill. They went from Klaus to Silas, who was a lot more powerful than Klaus, but he sucked. And then they had to go back down again in terms of power because Kai is a lot weaker than Silas, and it worked. Then they reverted back to the model again and tried to create an even more powerful villain than Kai, the Heretics, and they sucked. Then they created a vampire hunting superhuman, and she also sucked. Then they created the Sirens, who were more powerful than all of them, and they sucked. Then they created Cade, who was a lot more powerful than the Sirens, and he also sucked. Then they had to go all the way back down again to Katherine, and that also worked well. Just because a villain is extremely powerful does not make them great villains or even great characters. And that perfectly describes Ken. Ken as a character really doesn't have anything. Like, I'm not even joking. There is nothing going for him. He is average on every spectrum. The only person that he actually had chemistry with was Aurora, who is his wife in real life, so that makes sense. Everyone else, no chemistry with them, literally not a single great scene, and the show ended, so we didn't really get to see any aftermath in terms of impact. And during his time as an actual villain, didn't really impact much in terms of the characters. They were basically the exact same as they always were. So like I said, average on all fronts. However, the one thing that annoys me about him is the fact that they build him up to be this overpowering force of nature, just to have him die to a bunch of teenagers with the power of friendship, like his Power Rangers. And number 6, the Necromancer. If he would have actually been killed in season 2, he would have been placed higher. Mainly because he was one of the few characters that I actually found a bit entertaining. However, just like with Malivore, he stayed on way too long. Like, he was there, but what plot was he relevant to? He was just there for comedy relief, but he stopped being comedic and started being very annoying. Like, why are we wasting time on Ted the Ice Cream Man instead of having more character development for actual characters that we actually care about? Characters that are very much important to the plot. Like, for example, Malivore. Maybe give him some scenes that actually flesh out his character a little bit more if you're going to have him on for 4 seasons. Or have more scenes to flesh out Hope, Josie and Lizzie and start making them a lot more one-dimensional. And number 5, Ryan. Ryan is just another character that shouldn't have actually gone past season 2. There was no purpose of him. Like, he served no purpose past season 2. Other than the fact that he happens to be Malivore's son. We already have Landon for that. It would have been much better if he actually died in season 2. Ryan, in terms of writing, he was a lot better written than Malivore is, which is insane seeing as he was a minor villain compared to Malivore, who was the major villain for 4 seasons. However, yes, although Ryan is actually decently written, he wasn't a great character or even a good character. He wasn't captivating at all. Whenever you watch a Ryan Clark scene, you don't really feel anything. Maybe a bit of entertainment when it comes to him and Hope because they actually had good chemistry compared to Landon and Hope. But in terms of anything else, not really. Like, nobody in their right mind would actually say that they're actually watching the show or watching a season or watching an episode because of Ryan Clark or because of Ryan Clark's storyline. Like, that would never happen.
I'm so sorry.
Josie, what did you do?
I fixed her.
Now on to above average and higher. Number 4, Dark Josie. Dark Josie is yet another example in which a character was actually good at the start but just became ridiculous very quickly. Dark Josie in the prison world was actually a really good character, very entertaining, and someone actually showed glimpses of the Vampire Diaries and the originals. However, once she actually got out of the prison world, she became really cheesy. Although she wasn't annoying like the other characters, and the worst part is, nothing came from the storyline. She literally just reverted back to her old self. Like, they framed it as she sort of stepped out of Lizzie's shadow, but she really didn't. Lizzie basically just moved. Lizzie just wasn't there anymore, she was mostly with Hope. So Lizzie wasn't really there to actually cast a shadow for her to actually step out of. So basically all in all, she just reverted back to being the same old Josie. So nothing came from that. Basically meaning that there was no point in that storyline, especially when it went on for that long.
I didn't know if I could trust you.
Oh, goodness. Oh, perfect timing, baby. Immobilis! Hey, thanks for your help. Your instincts were right. There is no trusting me. So while you've been playing checkers, I've been playing chess. Checkmate.
And number 3, Kai. Well, it's Kai, so it's kind of expected. He could have been a lot higher, but they killed him off very quickly. Which is a shame because they had a really solid character who actually does well at moving the plot along. And not to mention he's very entertaining and would actually keep you watching the show. But they decided, yeah, no, he needs to die. But again, not Malivore. Kai, but not Malivore. Malivore deserves to stay on for 4 seasons.
I see him in you.
Oh, the pig? Well, I guess this relationship's off to a rocky start. But don't worry, I know exactly how it ends.
I was speaking of Klaus.
What do you know about my father?
Everything, little bird. For my name is Aurora De Martel.
And number 2, Aurora. Aurora is the only villain that wasn't a main character at one point that actually had a good storyline. Like, Aurora's storyline was quite good, at least captivating. Don't get me wrong, it's still not the best, it's still not good enough to actually make her a great character, but it's still a good storyline. Hence why she's actually ranked here. In terms of entertainment value, she was a lot more entertaining in the originals than she was in Legacies, but she was still quite entertaining in Legacies. Again, not the most captivating character, not the most captivating storyline, but it's still a far increase compared to everyone else I've already stated so far.
I'm not the one who's using black magic to stay young. Not very natural.
My vanity aside, you are cursed, child. A tribrid was never meant to exist and sullies the bloodlines of all 3 species. So, kill me if you must, but there will be no hiding from your fate.
Do I look like I'm hiding? Why don't you tell me where the vampire and the werewolf that you're working with are? I can have this conversation with them too.
And if I do, I will be just as dead. Ours is an unbreakable alliance, and any act of treason is punishable by
Fire, yes, I know. Except, you're the witch who bound that covenant spell in the first place. You're not dumb enough to put your life on the line. You're bluffing. And to keep with the poker metaphor, I call.
I'm warning you, Miss Mikaelson. The Alpha will tear out your blasphemous tongue.
I'm warning you, Agatha St. Clair. You're just giving me ideas.
And finally, number 1, No Humanity Hope. Which is kind of a no-brainer, sort of everyone expected it the moment that you actually see ranking every single villain in Legacies. Mainly because it's almost unanimously agreed that this is not only the best villain in the entire show, it is also the best character in the entire show. And I can actually go one step further and say this is the only good character in the entire show. Hope is the only character I actually see that can actually fit into the originals or into the early seasons of the Vampire Diaries. Like, Hope could be a major villain in the series. Although, don't get me wrong, she's not the best villain and she's not a great villain, but she's still a decent to good character. She's entertaining, she has good storylines, she has good scenes, and overall a decent character. It's just a shame that they only discovered that Hope is actually a good character literally right at the very end. Like, they only discovered how to write Hope's character right at the very end. After watching the originals, the version of Hope that you expected is the version that happened in season 4. Which is annoying because they just limited the character in the early seasons to just Landon, and also the fact that she's a tribrid or needs to be a tribrid. When you have Hope on her own, little to do with Malivore and his terrible storyline, little to do with Landon and his terrible storyline and his terrible character, you get a decent to good character. Quite literally the best episode in the show was Hope returning back to New Orleans and actually seeing her family again. But then once she turned her humanity back on again, she just reverted to being a Stefan-like character again, and that's a character that we've seen too many times for it to work again because Hope is far too complex to actually have her limited to that. We saw that with the New Orleans episode. But anyways, like the villains, continuity was also an issue for Legacies because it created a lot of plot holes. And if you haven't yet watched the video detailing 10 plot holes in Legacies, then click on the video that's on screen now.